Hey, remember this bad boy? Pathfinder 2E Beginner's Box? We reviewed this a little while back alongside the Dungeons & Dragons starter set, Stormwreck Isle. And we believe this won, so we wanted to give it a fair shot and actually play through it and then give our full thoughts and review. We are D&D players, and we have dared to dive into the Pathfinder.
Y'all been talking about this for a long time in the comment section on that Pathfinder versus D&D starter set box video. We're here to deliver. We're here to let you know what we think. We actually started playing this long before the OGL nonsense started happening, but there was a lot of things happening with our group. It was holiday season, people were getting sick, so we haven't been able to finish it until now, and we are ready to bestow a verdict upon this glorious beginner's box, which we were so infatuated with.
First, I'm going to start off by letting you know how I felt as a player playing Pathfinder, and then Wolf is going to tell you how he felt being a game master.
So I'm going to get up out of here and let Kamo take control of the video, and he's going to give you a deep dive into how it feels to be a Pathfinder player. Stay tuned if you want to hear my thoughts on game mastering this beginner's box. And then at the very end, we will come back and Voltron into a finale and give you our final thoughts.
All right, get the fuck out of here. No! Hey everyone, I'm Kamo, and I'm a D&D player.
Hello, Kamo.
And I played Pathfinder for the very first time. And I gotta say, I really was surprised. Everyone says the Pathfinder comes at you hard, and it's real crunchy. But I really found this to be quite appetizing and palatable. It feels more like a board game at times. There's a lot less pressure on the player. The way it was presented, it sets you up with pawns, it sets you up with a map to look at, it sets you up with character sheets where your character is already built, it already has a backstory. The pressure is completely off. I don't have to come up with or create anything if I'm a brand new player. That's not something I gotta worry about. The great thing is, like, if you do want to worry about those things, if you do want to be creative, then this even provides options for you to be able to make your own character, start on a character sheet, and make something new. I played Ezrin the Wizard, and I had a really fun time jumping into the role because the backstory was there for me. It was already spelled out. I'm the kind of player that is experienced with role-playing games. So not having the option of choosing who I wanted to be and what my backstory was, that didn't really matter to me. Just playing the part was fun enough. The amount of character information that they give you for any of the characters is just enough, that little pinch of salt, perfect for jumping into if you want to roleplay. When you open up the character sheet, it could look a little daunting at first, but everything is added there to make things easier for you. There's highlighted subjects, there's highlighted areas, like the armor class is highlighted, and your specific skills are in bold, so they're easy to see. I was never really questioning what I was doing on each of my turns playing the game. As being the experienced player in our group, I really wanted to choose the wizard because it's typically the most experienced class to play, right? You have to think about what spells you're using. The whole spell system in any game is really this additional thing that can be kind of complex. But it was so refreshing in this game. I was almost expecting it to be harder. I was expecting more. I'm like, what am I missing? And it was because of the action economy in this game that really sold me on the spell system. 3 actions, 1, 2, 3. And that is the most simplest form of playing this game. You don't need to know much more than that. You just know that your spells can either be cast with 1 action, but Magic Missile can be cast with 1, 2, or 3 for however many darts you throw. You can cast however many spells you want, as long as you use the 3 action economy to cast them. So I actually felt like a wizard. I always felt like I was doing something different for my party. I never felt those times where I was only casting the same spell because it was the most powerful spells, the easiest to cast, right? And the powerful spells, sometimes you can only cast them once if you've prepared them once. And then you have to do something else. You can't do the same spell over and over 5 times in a row. So it makes you think differently. As a spellcaster in D&D 5th edition, it can be really hard to keep up with things like bonus actions, spells that have concentration rules on them, you're worried about what you can concentrate on, and if there's another spell that is concentration, does that supersede the first one I cast? And, I have to turn off the other one. But in Pathfinder, the way I understand it is very different. The way I understand it is that you can use concentration spells, and maybe multiple, but it uses the action economy to keep those concentration spells going. So say you have like a flaming sphere spell, and every turn you have to spend one of your 3 actions to keep going. Well, maybe you have another spell that you wanted to cast at the same time, like Magic Missile. You wanted to use the last 2 remaining actions to fire off 2 magic missiles while you're still holding the sphere out. That's so cool. It makes you really feel like this very strong, learned caster. Specifically about this adventure, it's a very simple dungeon dive. I enjoyed it very much. And it should be enjoyable to brand new players. I'm talking about players that have never played a tabletop role-playing game. I can see them jumping into this very easily and getting hooked on something like this. One of my favorite parts was a puzzle where we entered a room and there was a statue there holding his hands out like a scale. And he told us there were coins in front of us, and he told us that one of the coins was fake, and we had to figure out which coin was fake. A lot of the times when players come into something like a puzzle, they can break out of their character because, oh, now we have this situation, this puzzle on the table, and we as people are just trying to solve it, right? But I really felt comfortable enough to be able to just continue playing my character while figuring out this puzzle, because it felt like it was in the world. It felt like it was a real situation going on. That was a real fun breakaway. It felt like we were really switching pillars. We're not doing combat. We weren't talking to anybody. We just had to come put our heads together and figure out a problem. I also really love how kobolds were introduced in this beginner box. It really described it to us as if we had never come across this creature before in our lives. And of course, we knew what they were, even though our Dungeon Master was not allowing... Dungeon Master, no! Gamemaster. Sorry, D&D brain. Even though our Game Master was describing this to us, we knew exactly what they were. But so fun having them described as lizard children. But my expectation versus reality was surprisingly very different. I was going into Pathfinder thinking that I was going to have to sit down and read a lot more and try to have to comprehend a lot more of what my character could do. And that wasn't the case. There was some reading, and no more than there was in the D&D starter set. I didn't really have to refer back to my character sheet very many times after that. I started learning my spells, I started learning exactly what my character could do, and they were easy things to remember that used their 3-action economy. So how can I convince 5e players to try this? I've been convinced. I really thought it was going to be difficult and crunchy, as I was told. And I love rules. I love to dive into rules. And I was kind of excited for that as well. But I was met with something very different. I was met with a system that was kind of simpler to understand. The other thing in D&D 5th edition is, like, once you've chosen your subclass, then every other character choice is pretty much automatic. You get, specific set skills, abilities at certain levels. You get ability score increases where you can choose a feat, and that's really your only chance to choose something at any one time. But in Pathfinder, there's a choice to be made at every level you go up. So anytime you reach a new level, there's a choice to make. There's something new direction you can go. Well, what if your character changes halfway through the campaign and it becomes something different, and you want to reflect that in how you're playing your character? In Dungeons and Dragons, you jump into multi-classing. I got to pick a whole, different multi-class. That's the only way I'm going to get different options is if I do that. Where this is already built to do that, and you feel unique and different than any other player. We're going to continue playing Pathfinder, and I'd love to see what's coming up in the future.
I'm Wolf, and I used to be a D&D 5e Dungeon Master.
Hi, Wolf!
I heard there'd be pies and soda. I thought that running Pathfinder 2e was going to be a nightmare, but I'm happy to report that I was wrong. This thing runs silky smooth as a game master. This is like a sports car that runs like a dream. I couldn't be happier about my game mastering of this beginner's box. Recently, Paizo has gone on record saying that they have sold through like 8 months worth of their core rule books in about a few weeks' time, which is amazing. It means people are flocking to Pathfinder. I wonder why. But you don't need to buy that core rule book. Instead, spend your money on this, get the Trouble in Otari adventure that sort of is the brother-sister product to this, and maybe a Gamemaster screen. You could play Pathfinder 2e for like 6 months to a year with just those products. And it is the easiest and best starting entry point that you could possibly have for this game. I want to take a second here to address the massive Tarask sitting in the corner of the room. I know I can hear you out there in tabletop role-playing world, but Pathfinder 2e, it's so dense, it's so crunchy. I've got news for you. 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons is just as crunchy and just as dense as Pathfinder 2e. If you and your group have taken the time to learn that game, you're perfectly fine and you're perfectly capable of playing Pathfinder 2e. I guarantee it. The reason I feel so confident that you can pick up Pathfinder 2e is because if you've played 5th edition, the same core principles are at play. You're going to roll a d20, add any applicable modifiers, and you're hoping to beat a DC that is higher than what the Dungeon Master has set before you. So if you've played any edition of Dungeons & Dragons in the last like 20 or 30 years, you know the core principles at play in Pathfinder 2e. That has not changed. If you've never played a tabletop role-playing game before, I'm not going to lie, you're going to have a slight learning curve, but thankfully the adventure included within this box does a fantastic job of teaching you how to play the game, whether you're a game master or player. Speaking of the included adventure, I just want to forewarn you that this is not going to be some grandiose epic adventure that you and your friends are going to remember forever. This is a teaching tool first and foremost. That's what it's good at, but just be forewarned. As a teaching tool, I find this to be utterly brilliant. Each new room or obstacle that the players and game masters come across is a new opportunity for them to learn about the game together. You'll figure out combat, environmental obstacles, difficult terrain, and more. This is all going to happen naturally, and you probably won't even realize that the game is teaching you all about role-playing games as you're experiencing the adventure. I do wish that this came with a really cheap cardboard Gamemaster screen. I went out and bought my own because I found it was going to be a little bit easier to run the game with it. There's a lot of helpful information on that screen, and I didn't want to be looking up any rules. Having them right there, it just made me comfortable. It's a minor quibble, to be sure, and I can't really hate on them too much because they pack this thing with so much awesome stuff. They give you maps, they give you pawns, they give you pre-generated characters. I just wish they went that one extra step and included that Game Master screen. But I do recommend getting the official one. It's like 15, 20 bucks. It's going to help out if you're a brand new Game Master to Pathfinder like I was. Paizo did an awesome thing by starting off this adventure right in the dungeon. You start off right in the basement. You get right to the action. This is a classic adventure module design choice that works so well because you don't have to deal with role-playing or any of the stuff that really intimidates players. I'm saying this because we recently played through the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, and where that adventure starts you off with a combat, it immediately thrusts you into a incredibly difficult role-playing experience where you have 9 kobolds and then an elder human woman that you have to start role-playing with immediately. For people that are brand new to role-playing games, I find role-playing to be the hardest thing to get comfortable with. Exploring a dungeon at your leisure, getting into combat, looking at weird, interesting things down in the basement, that's all well and good. Players are comfortable doing that. It almost feels like a board game, kind of like Kamo mentioned. Let's talk nitty-gritty, let's talk rules a little bit. Obviously, the big hubbalub, the big hubbaloo everyone's talking about is that 3-action system that Pathfinder 2e is famous for at this point. Chef's kiss. It is amazing. I love it so much. It is my favorite thing about Pathfinder 2e. Do you want to attack 3 times in a room? Go for it. Just know that your second and third attacks are going to be at negative modifiers. Do you want to run 3 times? You don't need a dash action. You just use your actions. You're like, I'm running away 3 times. It is brilliant. It is clean. It is so good. My players immediately picked it up. It feels like a board game. I know I've mentioned that before, but they had almost 0 questions about it once we got into the adventure. And the fact that they give you that little sheet with your 3 action tokens and a reaction reminder, so good. Just another reason you want to buy this before the core rulebook, just to have that stuff. I'd want to play with it as a player for a few months just as I'm getting comfortable with this system. The rules very clearly delineate that there are always 4 types of successes on any given roll. There is a critical success, a failure, and a critical failure/fumble. If you roll a natural 20 in Pathfinder 2e, what happens in game terms is that you go up 1 success level. So where I talked about there was critical failures, successes, and critical successes. Say you happen to roll a natural 20 and with your modifiers, you only scored a success. Well, the natural 20 will automatically bump you up to a critical success because you're going up 1 higher success level. But you can also achieve critical successes by rolling 10 higher than the DC you were trying to achieve. So if you happen to roll a 25 after your modifiers and you only needed to hit a 15, even though you rolled an 18, critical! So good. And the same thing happens for fumbles/critical failures. If you roll 10 below, you're going to get a critical failure. These new critical and critical failure rules, they do something amazing. They are going to lead to more critical successes and more critical failures in your games. It results in a slightly swingier game, but it also leads to more excitement. Because when your players roll and they start realizing they only need to roll 10 higher than the difficulty class or the armor class to get a crit, what ends up happening is Kamo's over there rolling. He's like, oh, I got a 24. Is that crit? Is that a crit? And you're like, it's just more fun at the table. People want to get critical successes. They want to be doing awesome stuff. But at the same time, if you attack a bunch of times, you get really high negative modifiers, and you go to kill that kobold, you have much more increased chance of fumbling/critical failing. It is really, really fun as a game master to educate and to sort of really flex your improv skills. I actually went out and bought those critical hit and critical miss decks that Paizo offers for Pathfinder 2e. I bought a lot of stuff for this. I was really jazzed to play it. Just know that Pathfinder 2e is a lot swingier than your standard session of 5e. You're going to get a lot more crits and a lot more fumbles, and not just because the dice screwed you. Let's get into a few negatives, a few things that I did not like about this. I've mentioned time and time again that this adventure is a training tool for the Game Master and players, but I don't necessarily love how it's grooming the Game Master to really rely on rolls for everything. There's a couple instances early on in the adventure where you're asked to either climb up a craggy wall or go down a craggy wall, and you have to make athletics or acrobatic checks of like DC 15. The players have rope. They can tie them up to rocks or stalagmites, and they can easily rappel down. I would just give this to my players. I want people coming up with fun and interesting ways to get around obstacles. I don't want them to just constantly ask for skill checks and skill rolls and hoping to roll high to solve things. So that's more of a personal pet peeve, and I just don't like that it asks so much of this. There's a lot of that in this adventure. If you're game mastering for the first time, I don't think that's a really great habit to get into. I like the fact that there are rules for climbing, and they're very concrete, because unlike 5th edition, I've noticed that Pathfinder, there are rules for basically everything. You're not left hanging in the wind, sort of figuring it all out on your own or coming up with a ruling on the fly. If there's something that you can do in the game, chances are there's a rule for it somewhere out there in Pathfinder 2e's massive core rulebook. Paizo, you need to be a little bit better at proofreading your products. I noticed there's a few typos in the adventure and the Game Master's Guide / Player's Handbook. And on the map that's included, there's one spot where there's a door in the adventure that you're reading, but on the map itself, the door's not there. Get a little bit tighter with your proofreading. I don't like seeing sloppy products out there. I can't give you a pass for it. Again, we're coming to the crunchiness and the density of Pathfinder. Do you want to know how many pages the real core rules of this thing takes up? It's about 11 pages. If you can memorize and digest 11 pages worth of rules, you'll have almost everything you need to run and play the beginner's box. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if you don't even read the rules beforehand, but you've got prior dungeon mastering, game mastering experience, you could probably take this thing out of its cellophane wrapping, look at it for about 30 minutes, open up the adventure, put out the map, give everyone their pre-gens, their pawns, and you could just sort of almost play it like a board game and figure it out on the fly. That's how goddamn intuitive and easy to play this box set is. All right, let me talk directly to the 5e Dungeon Masters out there that are curious about this product, curious about Pathfinder 2e. Is this for you? Is this something that you want to try running? Well, I want to ask you a few questions first. Do you get tired of having to come up with rules in 5e? Do you get a little bit frustrated that they meaning Wizards of the Coast, they don't have rules for everything, or they have a little bit of rules, but they expect you to do a lot of the heavy lifting because they almost don't want to make people mad. If you play 5th editions, you're acutely aware of all of the rules inconsistencies and sort of nebulous situations that happens. Again, Paizo has written this thing like a tech manual. It is tight. It is clean. There are tags for magic items, monsters, spells. It's like, is this spell going to work against this monster? Check to see if it has this tag. There are really smart design choices in this box, in this rule system. It is cleverly designed. It is smartly designed. It is the exact opposite of what Wizards of the Coast design ethos seems to be these days. They assume a lot of things that you're going to know. Pathfinder assumes nothing. It gives you rules for everything. What you want to use, feel free to use that. It can seem to be as rules heavy or as rules light as you really want to make it to be. But we'll find that out as we continue to sort of explore it. As a game master, dungeon master, I can't recommend this product enough. I had a fantastic time going through it with my friends, with my players, and I think that you would too if you give it a shot, if you can find it. It sounds like Paizo might be selling out of this stuff real fast. Again, I wonder what happened that caused this all to happen. Why'd you do it, Wizards? You done fucked yourselves! Well, that was informative. That was wonderful. We're the best. Oh my gosh. What did you think about this thing? What are your final thoughts about the beginner box there, Kamo?
I was scared at first, but there's no reason to fear. It was so much fun, so much more easier than I thought it was going to be. And I had a blast with my friends playing some Pathfinder.
I agree. I was convinced I was going to hate this for a long, long time. I think Wizards has like the best PR system out there where they're like secretly feeding internet trolls to talk trash and about how crunchy and dense Pathfinder is. It's not. This is pretty easy to get into. If you can play 5th edition, you can very easily play Pathfinder. I guarantee it.
If you're a D&D Dungeon Master and you're trying to figure out a way to kind of convert your players into playing Pathfinder, go online, have them download the app, or visit the website of Pathbuilder 2e. It's a great tool to play around with character creation. They can just dive in and go through all the options, go from level 1 to 20 and try all the different things. They're going to start getting excited about all the things they can do, all the different choices they can make at each level.
Here are my 2 selling points. 1, player character customization. It doesn't exist in 5e. It's not going to really exist in 1D&D/6th edition. This is where it is at. If you want to go through, you want to pick your feats, you want to pick all the cool stuff that makes your character unique. If you have 2 fighters at the table, they can be drastically different fighters. My second pitch, my second really awesome thing is you got clear and concise rules for once. There's no ambiguity here. It is tight. It is clean. If you're a game master, if you're a dungeon master, you want those rules to actually make goddamn sense. Here you go. Play Pathfinder.
And this is such a great introduction to that rule set in this game. For sure. For even players that have not played role-playing games ever before in their life.
I've been doing a lot of game mastering, dungeon mastering, and I really want to hand the torch off to Kamo. Now that we finish this up, we're going to run the Troubles in Otari, whatever that extra adventure is that the companion adventure that they put out with this. I want to be a player in this so bad. I'm more excited to be a player in this than I am a game master, if I'm being honest.
Well, you had too many rules to remember?
No, not at all. It's just it seems so much fun. You have so much character options and cool things you can do. And I want to be a weird goblin alchemist that throws bombs and blows shit up. I just want to do something different. If I'm going to play a game that is as complex as 5e, I want to play a character that feels like something that I've personally created and I've personally made all these choices. I feel like this system is the one to do it in.
Definitely. The most exciting thing and the most exciting sell for a player is you could toss them into that Path Builder 2e thing and they start figuring out all the things that they can do. And they get more and more excited about like, oh, that sounds cool. That sounds cool. That sounds awesome. You're going to easily get them to jump into this game. And like everyone's worrying about the first step, and it is. That's always the question, is what is the first step? If you're in 5th edition and God, man, I'm a dungeon master and I'm already in the middle of a campaign and my players are asking me if we can switch and man, it's a new rule system and my players are going to be all confused and I'm going to be confused. Like, this is it. You can just try this. It has nothing to do with your campaign. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's very simple to pick up and learn and play. And then all of a sudden, it's easy. If you've played this beginner box with your group and you would like to help us convince some D&D players, please leave some comments down in the comments.
That's where they go.
If you're looking to excite your D&D players into starting Pathfinder, we left that pathbuilder2e.com link down in the nether region. Bring that up in front of them, have them play around with it. Don't forget to subscribe, we've got more content coming at you weekly. Tell the dead for notifications. Later, liches.
Bye!